a different phone tonight, so let me know if you can still hear me. Never used this one before. I have no microphone on this one either, so apologize if the audio is a little bit worse than normal, but just gonna have to deal with it for a week. I had my iPhone, like the cord died on me, so I'm waiting for the new cord to come. Hopefully it'll be here tomorrow, and yeah, I think that's about it. But yeah, I want to just have a conversation tonight. Hopefully, there's a couple things going on in town that I'm curious to get your opinions on, just because of I don't know. I think it's like more controversial kind of stuff. So want to talk to you about that a little bit, and then just see if we can get from you guys what you think next steps are for Kittanning. I finally have the Mike Rizzo and we finally filmed the last podcast for the Kittanning 300 series, and so that's really exciting. That'll be out on Friday, and it was just kind of the culmination. Mike and then me to a lesser extent have been going through and researching all the greatest cities in the United States, greatest small towns in the United States, just based off of, I think it was 7 or 8 different lists online. And so trying to figure out, what is it that these towns have that we don't, and then trying to figure out, well, what can we implement? What are the logical next steps for us that we can then kind of steal ideas from them or figure out what's missing in Kittanning. And so I'm just curious from your guys' perspective, where do you think we go from here? I know for me, a lot of it's just kind of like continuation of what we've already done. And so like Summer of Serve, how we went and did a lot of bigger projects this year. I think I believe that more is possible than I ever thought was possible before. And so, now I'm already thinking about next year, and I really want to line up a lot more projects ahead of time and see if we can't, really make even double the amount of progress that we made this summer. And this summer was easily double the amount of progress from the summer before. And so I just think if we can get more organizations together, get more churches together, try to get more volunteers. I know that I've said that in the past, and it largely hasn't been as successful as I wanted it to be. However, we did make a lot more progress this year. There were definitely more businesses involved this year, and then there were other groups involved as well. We did have volunteers from a couple other churches a couple times, and then Ford City is off and running in their Summer of Serve projects now too. And so definitely made a lot of progress in that realm. And I think, when you start to get a little bit of a foothold, the progress just kind of snowballs. It starts small always, and then it works its way into something greater than we could ever ask or imagine. So, just would love your opinions on those things. Where do we go from here? So, number one, I said continuation of the things that we're already doing. But is there something new? Is there anything else that you'd like to see? Kind of begin or we could begin to plan for those kinds of things. Caden was first. Caden always seems to be first. Man, you are quick. Kevin is here second, as usual. Meatloaf is here. She wants an impression of a Visco girl. I don't know if I can do that, especially on a live stream. Connie is here. Good to have you, Connie. Always great to have you. I saw your picture of all the okra from the community garden. If you guys drive by the community art garden, you'll see the first raised bed there we had our local homeschool co-op. Actually, the high school kids were looking for a service project that they can do every other week basically as one of their classes. And so we had 7 students that came out, and they just killed it. These kids they're really handy. They know what they're doing. I didn't have to hardly lead them at all. I basically gave them a verbal description of what I wanted to happen, and they made it happen. And so they made one of them. We have 3 more raised beds that'll be built there. What we're trying to plan for is to have a flower wall that'll be there over the next spring and summer. hopefully we'll have just layers and layers of flowers that will be there at the front of the community garden and just make it something really beautiful. So they're planning to put all that together for us for the wood, and then we're going to help them also build a fence around the community garden. It's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty exciting for me because the community garden is something that I wanted to do for 5 years, and then all of a sudden that lot became available from the city, and it's turning into something better than I ever imagined. But if you're looking for stuff from the garden, there's new tomatoes ripening every single day. There's new peppers ripening every single day. There's okra there if you can beat Connie to it, and then there's also tons of greens left. So there's some salad greens there. Some of them are bitter, but the kale is actually only going to get better over the next month or so, especially after the first freeze. The kale will taste even better than it has in the past. So I would definitely suggest that you find some kale recipes. There's gonna be plenty of it there, and yeah, we're gonna have to figure out a way to use that for potluck or something too, because there would be, if we would just bag it up in gallon bags, there's probably 15 gallons there, I would bet. So let's see here. Let's see. Krista says, people are calling me crazy this week. If you change the channel I'm watching, what are you talking about, Krista? I don't understand. Roger's in the house. Good to have you, Roger. Big Dog's in the house. Good to have you guys. I would just picture the three of you in the house. You all have different computers or whatever. My face is on all of them. So I'm glad you invite me to your house every Sunday night. I enjoy it. Let's see. Kevin also wants to do the Visco girl thing. Michael's here. Good to have you, Michael. Yeah, the Myers family came over to our house over the course of the last week. Well, I don't remember what day it was, Kevin. Wednesday night, I think. And so that was super fun. Having that whole clan here it was a hoot. It was great. And then my two oldest daughters beat almost everybody at Jenga, and then Kevin finally beat him at the end of the night, and so he'll never let them live it down. Stay woke, Kevin. Connie says they did a good job. I'm assuming that's on the raised bed, and it does really look nice. I spent quite a bit of money on wood to make that happen. However, I think it's going to be worth it. In the end, I think it's going to look pretty good. I'm just using it out of my, take it out of my State Farm marketing money, pour it into the community a little bit, right? Krista says, that's not a pickle. Well, it's not a cucumber, but pickle can be a lot of different things. Swan says, hey all, happy Sunday. Even if the Seahawks can ruin everything, fine, there's always next week to start a win streak. Well, without Big Ben, it's gonna be a different team. They're down now. If you look from last year's team, they're down their three best offensive performers. So hopefully Ben's okay for next week for the Steelers' sake. But I guess the new kid looked all right. He looked pretty good. Maybe he could pull it together. And maybe it'll be like the story when Big Ben started in 2004, I think, end of 2004, when Tommy Maddox got hurt and Big Ben came in after, I think it was 4 games, and then he just went undefeated until the AFC Championship. You never know. That's how football works. So could be. Paul said, make salad out of the kale for potluck to go with the spaghetti. Yeah, I think we need to do that, Paul. Let's see here. Kevin says, technically it was a tie. We have to share the Jenga world title belt. Let's see here. Yeah, Krista, you can pickle pretty much anything. Any vegetable. Just about all of them will pickle in some capacity. So you can make, pickled onions and peppers and yeah, Kevin's talking about doing kale stems. He saw it somewhere, so we're gonna try it, I think. What else can you pickle? Well, just about anything. You could pickle beets, carrots, basically any vegetable. Kevin says just not everything tastes good pickled. Let's see. Oh yeah, pickle fruit too. Pickled watermelon rind is really good. Connie says pickled okra, of course. Tim says perfect weather day in Colorado today, 85 degrees. Next door neighbor had a chili cook-off for the Vikings-Packers game. Had 3 bands in our block party today. That sounds like an awesome day, Tim. Except the Vikings lost, so that's not helpful. But anyways, Krista says I like whipped cream on pickles. That sounds horrifying. Yeah, that's not for me. But anyways, let's get back to the conversation. Where do we go from here for Kittanning, you guys? The thing that I really want your opinions on, the number one item on I think everyone's list right now, is the Armstrong, Indiana Drug and Alcohol Commission wants to purchase the Church of God as a recovery center. They want to use it basically as like a community center for people that are in active recovery, that they'll have a place to go and things to do, that kind of stuff. There's a couple places downtown that I learned more about this week. So Unity downtown kind of serves in a similar function. It's like I don't know, almost like a counseling center / they could teach life skills, those kinds of things. But they focus not necessarily on addiction recovery, but they focus more on in the lines of mental health. And so I know that they're deeply ingrained, they're tied together, similar processes, but not exactly the same. And then the Empowerment Center that is downtown as well. Is that what it's called? Yeah, I think it's the Empowerment Center. They are they call it a drop-in center, and so it's just a place where if you're in recovery, then you can just go there and have a place to hang out. That's basically what that is. And so this would fit kind of a need in the community that doesn't currently exist. But most people seem to be heavily against it because of the location. It's in a middle of a residential area, and so it's kind of like garnered a lot of bad press. Which for me, I don't know if it's completely justified. I guess if my house was there, I'd rather be a church than that. But if the church is going to leave, I'd rather have a recovery center there than have an big empty building that's going to rot next to my house. So I don't know. It's just an interesting conversation. I'm interested to hear some more opinions. I've talked to a lot of people about it, but if any of you have an opinion on that, I'd just love to see it and love to talk about it. I mean, I know we need more things for people that are in recovery, but I'm just not sure what that exactly needs to look like. I do know for one thing, the church needs to step up and be willing to reach out more. And I'm preparing my own life to be able to do that. And hopefully, as a church, we'll be willing to kind of take those steps as we move forward. But I don't know. It's a hard topic, and I guess I haven't made any videos specifically on that because honestly, I'm not completely on one side or the other. I'm ready to support and be excited about whatever's going to happen, and I'm going to be 100% behind it either way. And obviously, I'm for helping people that are caught in addiction recover. That's like very high on my list, and so I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it. But so opinions, comments, questions. I would love to talk more about that. Oh, another really exciting thing too. I have the 4 county commissioner candidates. I have them booked for a roundtable discussion that I'm going to film and utilize for the podcast. I might break it into like 3 or 4 different sections because I have them for 2 hours. So I'm going to fully utilize that 2 hours. I would like to go through 8 different topics with them and have a roundtable discussion for 15 minutes on each topic. and then just kind of get an idea of where the county commissioners stand on a multitude of different issues. And I'm really, really excited about it. So. All right. Krista really wants the Visco girl impression. Maybe at the end of the live stream, we'll see. Either way, I'll do it on Snapchat for you. It's something that'll disappear. But you also said I need to say psych right now, so I can definitely say that. Say psych right now. That's my like favorite teenager saying right now because it combines things from my childhood with something new, and it's hilarious. So basically, the premise is that if someone says something that you don't agree with, you say psych right now because you want them to be joking about it. And I've already used that on my wife a couple times, so I'm planning to do that more and more in my everyday conversation because I love it so much. Okay, here we go. Kevin says, what are they afraid of? They need to get help. That is the addicts. And so, I agree with that, Kevin. And I'm just not sure. I don't understand. That's the one thing that I'm not sure of. I know I've heard a couple arguments that documented cases of house prices going down when a recovery center goes in. My assumption is that's more for like a inpatient, like full on recovery center and not so much for a community center. So that's one of the things. But Andrew Hirsch says the ones complaining may be under the delusion that there aren't addicts currently around their house to start with. And yeah, totally. And if I talked to the pastor there at the Church of God, he's told me about, there's multiple drug deals go on right behind the church all the time. And so what maybe in one case, what better thing to go there than a recovery center? You'd think that'd be a great thing if they're going to actively reach out to people. Now, if they're going to be just inwardly focused, then it's probably not going to work either way. But if they're going to go after it and actually reach out to people and try to bring people in for recovery, then I think it could be a really great thing for the neighborhood. Andrew says, if they're exposed to how it's going to be run, maybe that would help. They may think that it would be just addicts wandering around day and night doing and dealing drugs. Yeah, I think people automatically, to your point, Andrew, go to like the worst case scenario. Like we always assume the worst, it seems like. I'm the exact opposite. I always assume the best, whether it's people or organizations or businesses or whatever. I'm always seem to be making excuses for things that maybe aren't even excusable. But at the same time, I think as a society, we need to begin to believe that people that are telling you that they want to help, that they actually do want to help. That we stop, maybe keep your guard up, look for the ulterior motive, but assume the best. Assume the best. Kevin says, there's a lot of addicts in Kittanning. They are everywhere. They need us to help them get better. If not help, then at least support, not stand against. Totally with you on that one. The two books that I've read recently, the one is called Lost Connections. It was a fantastic book about mental health. I don't agree with hardly any of the conclusions of it, but the research and the stories at the beginning about how we ended up where we are today when it comes to mental health, I mean, it was really eye-opening. I would highly suggest it. The whole price of the book is worth the first four chapters. In fact, I need to listen to the first four chapters again this week because I just believe and know that it's that important. And so there was that book, and then the other one was called Chasing the Scream, both by Johan Hari, who's just he's a person that I wouldn't get along with. Our worldviews are completely opposite as far as the solutions side of it. But he's a fantastic storyteller. Seems to be a good researcher by my account, by my estimation. And yeah, I just could not suggest those two books just for the background information alone. They're really good. But those two things, sorry, the whole point of me telling you that, the reason that I agree with you, Kevin, is the premise of those books is that the reason that we have a mental health crisis in our nation and in the world is not necessarily that, you know, where there's just a higher diagnosis of mental health, which is the excuse that we hear all the time. Oh, it was always that way, but now it's just diagnosed more. I don't believe that for 1 second. The reason that he has in the book is that we're made to be connected as human beings. And so we need to be connected to meaningful work. We need to be connected with family and friends. We need to be connected to people around us that we can trust. And what drugs do is it isolates people. And we're utilizing those substances because we're masking pain. We have deep trauma from our childhood, or we have trauma from other experiences that happen in life, or you hear all these stories of someone has a major surgery and then they get opioid prescription because of it. And so they're originally masking that pain. And so it can be masking physical pain, it can be masking mental and emotional pain, it can be masking, in my estimation, spiritual pain. And so we need to be there to connect with people. They need a community in order to recover. And so we have to be willing to reach out, even if you've been burned before, even, you don't need to be foolish about it. You don't need to I don't know, trust people with your checkbook or something like that. But we do need to be willing to reach out and connect and be able to provide that life ring, so to speak. If we're driving the boat out there, then we need to be able to be willing to throw out the life vest, throw out something that these people that are drowning could grab onto and connect with. Let's see here. Connie says, rehab center is a good idea, but think about bringing all the addicts into a congested area where lots of elderly live or family with young children. I don't know how safe it would keep the area. And so, yeah, I mean, to the point earlier, Connie, they are already here, but I can see your point about consolidation. They're going to need a community, but the one problem that I have about just having a recovery center is that if you're having people in active recovery try to help people that are in active recovery, if you don't have enough people there that are strong, then you will kind of end up with a chaotic environment, or you have the potential to end up with a chaotic environment. That's kind of why I'm so in favor of the church being reaching out, because there's a lot of us in the church that are recovered from either alcoholism or from opioid addiction or from addiction to other substances. And so, gosh, what better people than ones that have been saved and sanctified by Jesus Christ? What better ones to reach out than us? And so that's kind of where my head goes. I do understand that concern though, Connie, and especially when it comes to like home values, those kinds of things. I wonder, I haven't looked into that claim yet, but I'm very, very curious to see if that's actually true or not. Sorry, I'm reading through comments here with good discussion though. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So thank you guys for participating. Tim says, our neighborhood voted down a recovery center when the city allowed in 2 pot stores. Now we're dealing with homeless coming to our area and lots of burglaries. Lots of craziness. I mean, Colorado's kind of like this test bed right now. The one book actually utilized Colorado, the one that was Chasing the Scream about the drug war, used Colorado and Seattle as examples of how to do things right. And as I said, I don't agree with a lot of the conclusions of the book, but the research was really great and the stories were really great. So, but Colorado, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Colorado's the one that didn't have a lot of restrictions on it. I think Seattle had some more restrictions than Colorado did, but they took very different approaches in how to pass the law. And so I think Colorado's was that, marijuana, yeah, definitely. Colorado's was that argument was that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. That was the main argument behind it. And they were harassing Hickenlooper, who was the governor of Colorado at the time. They were harassing him because his family made their fortune on selling alcohol, and they talked a lot about how he was very hypocritical because he was against marijuana sales, but was very much for alcohol sales because it's how they made their money. And so I thought that was an interesting story as well. But Colorado is going to be the great test bed. They are, they are running basically a large social experiment essentially, and we'll see if it succeeds or not. My guess is that they will have more success than the rest of us because they are in effect, even though it's not the love of God, they're in effect showing more love to people that want to use marijuana than people that than we do, because we're throwing people in jail, those kinds of things. I'm not saying that that's wrong, that's the case or whatever, but they are creating more community around that, which I think will be negative in the long run, that they're encouraging people to use. But it's positive in the short run because they're helping people actually find community, and they're helping people find recovery through community in one sense. And so there's a piece of that where that we could take as the church, or we could take as a people, if we can take that little bit of love that they're showing people through the legalization, if we could take that and show people the love of God in obviously not the same way, because we're not going to go out on the street and hand out drugs, but if we could show the people community and show people love, I think we could have a much, much greater positive impact than anything that Colorado and Washington will see, if they see anything at all. But that all, I think, just remains to be seen. Like I said, it's a grand social experiment that they're undergoing right now, and I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. I'm watching very curiously to see statistics as they come out over the coming years. Okay. Kevin says, I can agree to that. Since I have been coming to church and making friends, I'm a million times better mentally. My hermit days are gone. And yeah, you're probably a great testimony for that very, very thing, Kevin. And you're a changed man, and it's a beautiful thing. I believe that that's how God wants us to operate. I really, really do. Andrew says, people being piled up in cities so much sure doesn't help. The availability of drugs is more prevalent than it's ever been in the history of the world, and they're more potent than ever as well. That's definitely true. Definitely true. The fact that we congregate together in greater numbers than ever before makes places giant targets for drug dealers, and that was one of the arguments in the book as well, though, is that the more that you try to stop it, the more that it actually gets out of control, because then the book basically argued, using history as the example, whenever you eliminate something, whether it be alcohol or opioids or marijuana or whatever it might be, you never can actually eliminate it. You just push it underground, and then you lose the regulation, you lose the tax dollars, and you lose the safety of the drugs as well. And then you increase on the opposite side. You empower cartels, you empower drug dealers, and you actually will increase violence, and you'll increase overdose deaths. One of the arguments there is that all the opioid deaths, or the big increase in opioid deaths in the United States, are not necessarily caused by an increase in use. They're caused by an increase in the prevalence of things like fentanyl. And they find that when people use heroin, pure heroin, under controlled environment, they don't end up looking like junkies, because the clean portion of the drug actually, obviously you can overdose on it and it can definitely kill you, but it doesn't, like, you see a lot of people with sores all over their bodies and some like that, people that look like what we would call junkies. Well, a lot of like the sores and things that they have come from the fact that drug dealers will load all these other chemicals and load different things into it so that when you're injecting it, you're not actually injecting just the drug. You're injecting all kinds of crazy stuff into your body. And then you have things like fentanyl, that kind of stuff, and that's when you see the increase in opioid deaths. It's pretty wild, all the different research that I've put into this, because then I not only read the book, then I go and read all these articles after the fact. And it's really interesting in places like Portugal, where they're seeing actually great decreases. They've completely legalized everything, or not legalized, I shouldn't say. They've decriminalized everything, and so they're actually handing out clean needles. They're doing all these kinds of things, but from a spiritual perspective, I'm looking at it as they're giving these people love, and they're giving people community. They're showing addicts that someone actually cares for them, that someone really does want them to recover, that someone really does want them to be alive. And so I think that changes everything. I don't know. I just think so many times we look at addicts as that they wanted that life. And I don't think anyone ever wanted that life. I think they ended up in it, and they might have been even chased into it because they had things happen in their childhood that they had no control over, and now they're just seeking something to fix that pain. I don't know. I just think we need a different level of empathy as a city and as individuals, and most certainly as the church. We should be the most empathetic people that walk on the face of the earth, and I know I don't always see that in myself, and so I'm praying God change me, and God help us to help be the solution, because the gospel is the solution, right? I mean, Jesus is always the solution, and so we have to look at it as a church and say, okay, Jesus, how do you want us to? How can we have a greater impact on this than we've had in the past? Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox here. I should just read your guys' stuff. Kevin says, I can't even stop drinking Pepsi. I can't give any advice to quitting drugs. You did quit drinking Pepsi for the Daniel fast. You just started again, which, it's you're on like a 8-month relapse, but you'll get better again. Gene's in the house. Good to have you, Gene. Andrew says, hey, remember the 80s? There were whole PR campaigns against drugs that died out in the 90s, and there's basically nothing now. You're sneered at for suggesting weed causes brain damage, which it does, and leads to harder drugs, which it does. And yeah, I mean, nobody wants to. It always makes me crazy when they say marijuana has never caused a death, and I'm like, that's insane. Like, people will get, DUIs and DWIs are just the same for marijuana as they are for alcohol. Like, I'd be more terrified to be behind the wheel high than I would be to be behind the wheel, buzzed. And so I think that people say that it's not dangerous is absolutely false, 100%. And it does lead to harder drugs. I wouldn't call it like a gateway drug necessarily, even though it does do that. I don't think that it naturally leads to harder drugs. I think what happens is people start smoking marijuana or they start drinking to try to solve the pain problem that's inside of them. And then they find that it doesn't work because it's not solving the actual problem, it's just masking it. And so they think, well, now if I get something harder or if I get something stronger, then that will help. And so I don't think that the marijuana is the gateway drug. I think that the trauma is the gateway drug, but the marijuana is just kind of like step one on trying to solve the issue. So it's probably just semantics. It is like step one, that is the gateway. But I think trauma is the actual gateway. The pain is the gateway. True Story says, Andrew, will you read or have you read Boundaries by Townsend and Cloud? Yes, I have. It's a fantastic book. I really liked it. Is there a specific point that you are referring to that you want to bring into this? Because I do think boundaries are necessary, that we don't want to put ourselves in harm's way necessarily. But that being said, we do need to, I think, take more risks. I do think we need to take more risks with our money, with our time. We do need to put ourselves out there more and not be closed off as a church, not have our walls completely out. We have to be willing to help, but not willing to what's the word? Not willing to encourage people on in their addiction. What's the word I'm looking for, you guys? Help me out here. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Anyways. Enable, thank you. We don't want to be enablers, 100%. Yeah, it's a marijuana joke, Krista. I'm glad that you don't get it. When the state started getting all the tax revenue, the politicians started to change their minds about pot sales. Yeah, I mean, the government's always after more tax revenue. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Summer said, I think some sort of men's and women's camp with 8-week living facilities with daily classes, chores, Bible study, hands-on learning would be nice. Yes, absolutely, 100%. There's a Compassion, which is part of our denomination. They have what's called Hope Homes, and they'll actually create jobs for the addict community, and it's a full living facility. They actually the people don't even leave there for the first 6 months, and then for the second 6 months they get them into the work program, and every dollar that they make through the work actually goes right back into the home. So it's like completely self-supporting, but it's a 12 to 18 month program, and they're having success rates of 60 to 70%, which versus the things within the world system, we're talking like 5 or 10%. And so it's massively successful. I would love to get one in Armstrong County, because I think it would make a massive difference, and something like that is definitely needed here. And they always like to have their places be in a country setting, and so it wouldn't be in town. It would be very much not controversial, as opposed to what they're trying to do now. That's the one thing I've been really encouraged by, is every single person that I've talked to says, well, I know that this facility is needed, I just don't think that it's right there. I want to see people get help, I just don't want to see it happen right here. And it's kind of like, it's NIMBYism, which is like not in my backyard. People want to see it, something good happen, but they don't want to see it happen here. And so, yeah, that's something that's fought all over the world. NIMBYism has been around for a long time, and it will probably continue to be around. So Gene says, thank you for praying with me today. God is moving. Yes, sir, and you're welcome. I'm always willing to pray for you. Tim says, I'm not against pot, but people coming here from all over the country is the problem. Don't get jobs and just join the homeless population. It's sad. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be Colorado and Washington's big issue, is the massive influx of people. I do think it creates a certain amount of jobs, but everyone comes out thinking they're going to start a marijuana dispensary and not realizing the massive amount of money that you need to have to make that happen. And so people go out with kind of a pie in the sky dream, and then they realize, oh, well, yeah, not what I thought it would be. Kevin says, it's hard when you know some that have been that way for years and years and nothing seems to work. Yeah, it's true. But to me, I just think, well, that just means we got to try something else. Or we got to actually try a God-centered solution. I don't think most of the time we're trying God-centered solutions. We're just trying things that the world tells us to do, and then we wonder why it doesn't work. Well, obviously. To me, it's obvious, at least. Meatloaf says, off topic again. Trust me, it happens often. I get these twitches from seizures, and it's twice this week. I dropped my phone on my face from one. This is unfortunate. Yeah, don't hold your phone above your face, you know? Kevin says, I think marijuana changed a lot over the years as well. Now there's hundreds of strains and strengths. It went from a relaxing thing to knocking you to the floor. Yeah. Yes. It's definitely changed. Tim says, been listening to Living Water sermons. Good stuff. Thank you. You're welcome, sir. I'm glad you're listening. That's awesome. Kevin says, I tried it once as a kid. I haven't since. I remember the feeling frozen in time. Yeah. It's definitely a numbing experience. It definitely does eliminate the pain and the thoughts for a little bit, but just like anything else, it comes back when it rubs off. And And a lot of times, in my experience, if you try to mask pain in that way, it comes back worse than it was before, especially if it's mental and emotional, and it just gets you in a bad road. Judy says, you know that you can get fentanyl and much others from China in the mail. Yeah, it's wild. And the one drug bust that they had, it was something like, I can't remember, but it was like 400 pounds of fentanyl they got coming across the border or something. And the amount of fentanyl that it takes to kill you is like, it's like smaller than a fingernail clipping. It'd be like a quarter of a fingernail clipping would be enough to kill you. It's massively, massively strong. And so you think 400 pounds, I think they said it was enough to kill the entire United States population 3 times over, which is totally insane to me. But they found that in one bust. One. So, and that's like my major argument is everyone always says, well, we just need a larger police presence. We just need to get the drugs out of town. There is no possible way that you are ever going to police your way out of this situation. I do agree that we do need to focus on the supply side. We do need to make sure that we're like not allowing drugs to run rampant in our town. But the solution is not on the supply side, you guys. The solution is on the demand side. If you can get healing and recovery to the addicts, then the drugs disappear. They won't be here anymore because there won't be any demand for it. I don't know. It's another soapbox. Sorry. Let me get back. Kevin says, stay away from that stuff, Judy. Yeah, Judy, don't order it in the mail. Just don't do that. Meatloaf says, I think that's what my aunt and cousin's heroin was when they overdosed. Maybe, not sure. Yeah, most of the overdoses do seem to be from fentanyl lately. And most of the deaths seem to be from that, for sure. True Story says, be sober-minded. A person can have a beer and not even be buzzed and still sober. If they have, no more. But pot or any drug taken and is done to achieve an instant high and often after only one hit. I say all that to affirm pot, natural or not, is bad. Totally agree with you, True Story. Totally agree. Now, we can believe that it's bad and still... I think we can believe that it's bad and still be for legalization or decriminalization. And that's a hard conversation to have, especially from a Christian perspective, because then you say, well, you're encouraging people, you're encouraging them to do the drugs. The more that I look into it, I don't necessarily see it that way. I just don't. Just like the way that when we had prohibition in the country for alcohol, it did cause the alcohol problem to go away. If anything, it made the alcohol problem worse because people were drinking more dangerous substances. People were drinking harder alcohol. It wasn't solving the demand problem. We tried to take care of it and solve the supply problem, but the problem wasn't with the fact that alcohol existed. The problem was that people had pain inside and they weren't being led to God to solve the pain. And so it's a totally different thing when you look at it from that perspective. It's really hard. And I'm a pastor, and I'm saying these things, but I'm trying to think, what is the best way for us to get people off of these things? Well, I think that it's to introduce them to Jesus, and I think the best way to introduce them to Jesus is to invite and to treat them with compassion, and to invite them into community. And so, if we could do that as a church, I think we can solve the demand issue instead of just focusing on the supply all the time. The other thing that does, if we just say, well, we just need to get these drugs out of the town, what that does is it actually removes the responsibility from us, and it puts it on the police, or it puts it on the drug task force, or it puts it on the border security, or whoever you want to put the responsibility on, and then you say, well, that's their responsibility, I don't have to be a part of it. And I think that is a grave, grave mistake for anyone that is involved with the church. I think we all have to take this on as an issue and we have to take it very, very personally and say, this is not This is not the police's problem. This is our problem. This is a spiritual problem. These are people that are going to, if they don't experience a salvation, they're going to die and go to hell for eternity. We should lose sleep at night over that fact, and we have to approach it from that perspective. In my opinion, I think that's when we'll see the real lasting change happen. And until the church decides to step up and take it seriously, I don't know that we'll ever be able to solve it. I'm going to give up on not preaching because I'm not going to be able to. This is a fantastic conversation, though. I'm really enjoying it. Let's see here. Sorry, guys, I lost my place here. Tim says, Woodstock was a great experience when I was a teenager, but then I got older, started a family, different perspectives after you have kids. Yeah, 100% on that one. True Story says, it's no coincidence it's called weed. The Bible's clear on whose side weeds are on. Anyone know any weed parables Jesus shared? Interesting. That is an interesting perspective. Never thought of it quite that way, but yeah, that's totally true. Even in the garden, right? There weren't any weeds in the garden until sin entered, and so that's a very interesting perspective, actually. I love that comment. Thank you, True Story. I don't want you guys to think at all that I'm pro drug, because I'm definitely not. But I'm pro people. I'm pro salvation. I'm pro gospel. And so I'm trying to work through what's the best way to take the gospel to as many people as possible. And I just don't think demonizing them is working. So let's see here. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Yes, but when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Yes, sir. 100%. True Story says, the opioid and all the pharmaceuticals are a huge societal experiment. People don't fall for it, and tell your children. Yes. I totally agree with all that too. Like, we do need to have education for our kids, and especially we need to try to remove as many sources of trauma from the world as possible. It's absolutely crazy how many kids are growing up in parentless households. How many people are growing up without fathers? How many people are, being introduced to these drugs at such a young age? How many children are trafficked? How many children are caught up in molestation and so many different things that is causing these like deep abiding pains? And then for us to just kind of leave those kids behind and try to just solve these problems on their own, I think it's automatically going to lead to more people caught up in addiction. The other thing, you go into the fact that as the welfare state grows bigger and bigger and bigger, it takes people's pride away. And so if you lost your job and now you qualified for disability, and you don't have that kind of you don't have that work anymore to kind of connect to be a part of the community working in that way, then it kind of steals away that pride of life, that healthy pride of life that we all should get to experience through meaningful work. And so when that happens, then you have a whole nother set of pain to deal with. And I think you look across all the Rust Belt cities across the country, it's like when these factories pulled out and welfare replaced the factory, you saw the opioid addiction numbers start to rise. I think that stuff is very much connected. And we try to fill the pain in our heart with something beside God, or something beside the gospel, something besides Jesus. It's never going to lead to a good place. It's just not. Brian Armitage says, buddy, this sounds like we are 45 miles left of Elizabeth Warren. I have to say, yeah, I am a conservative, I am a Republican, but I'm probably more libertarian than I am anything else. And so um, I'm at the point where I'm so frustrated with our solutions to the problems that I just am like, let's just throw all the laws out and let's just let it be the gospel versus society. Like I'd rather fight the war in the social in a social way than try to fight it through legislation because I just have lost all faith in the government, whether it be local, state, or federal. I've just lost all faith that they have the solutions. I just don't think that they do. Um, I think that bears out in real life. But I promise you, I'm not a socialist, Brian. I'm more libertarian than anything. I promise you, I'm not for government controlling this whole thing. Kevin says Pocahontas. Yeah. Uh, and I have to say too that I'm not even 100% certain on these things. I'm laying out for you guys what I've been researching. It's just been a whole paradigm shift in my mind that I just what we're doing is not working. What we're doing is not working. We have to start to look at other avenues, especially from a church perspective. What can we do as a church? How can we move forward to try to help people? So Brian, I hope you don't think less of me. I really respect your opinion, Brian, as well. I'd be very curious. You are on an end of town, and I know you've had experience with people stealing things and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that you have 2 cents. I'd be very, very curious to hear your perspective. That was actually another thing that the book brought out, which is interesting to think about. Um, when the petty crime numbers in Portugal went way down when they decriminalized these drugs because you could basically go in and you could shoot up under supervision with a cleaner drug, and you always knew that it was available. And so they had a lot of luck, getting these people into the doors, and then I shouldn't say luck. They had a lot of success getting people into the doors and then referring them over to recovery when they were ready to move and take that step. And it actually solved a lot of the petty crimes because these people that were addicted, they didn't have to steal from their family members. They didn't have to, go around town and try to, beg for money or try to steal somebody's, watch and pawn it off and try to get their next fix. They didn't have to do that stuff, and they had greater success getting those people into recovery and found that they were more ready when they arrived there because they had already kind of worked through that initial step of being a societal outcast. They didn't necessarily have to overcome that hurdle in recovery in addition to getting off the drugs as well. So I don't know, just a lot of different thoughts churning up here, you guys. Summer says Jesus' disciples picked weed in the fields on the Sabbath. It could have been weed. Yeah, I don't think so. I know you're joking. Um, but yeah, the parables are interesting because Jesus said, don't tear out the weeds because it'll ruin everything else. We'll handle that at the judgment day. But there were also different aspects too. You look at the parable of the sower, where the weeds were growing up and actually choked out the seed. The seed wasn't able to grow and bear fruit because of the weeds. And so a lot of interesting things there. And then the one I mentioned out of Genesis chapter 3, there were no weed to contend with in the garden until sin entered in. So very interesting. But once again, the weeds were not the sin; they were a product of the sin. So I don't know. I'm just gonna shut up now. They're definitely bad fruit though. Bad fruit, but removing the bad fruit doesn't solve the bad root. Doesn't solve the internal pain issue that we're experiencing as a world. Tim says recovery works when there's a plan to keep people busy and get their thoughts more positive and off the negative side with drugs as a fix for their issues. Yeah, and I do think, it has to come with genuine counseling, and I think the best solution is salvation. That's what changed me on the inside. That's what I preached about today was renewing our minds. Romans 12 verses 1 and 2. It's all about like transforming our. God wants to transform, which is like metamorphosis. That's the word that's in the Greek. And so it's literally like we're one creature and now we're a totally different creature, and our minds have been completely and utterly changed. And so, that's what people need. True Story says, did you know pharmacia is Greek for sorcery? And we know what the Bible says about sorcery, right? I did know that, actually. And yeah, it is super interesting, that whole discussion. And like I said, True Story, I'm on board with you. I'm truly 100% on board with you. I'm just wondering what's the best way for the gospel to get through. That's my brainstorm. Meatloaf says, oh yes, people are horrible to children sometimes. Someone yelled at Javen once, and me being me, throat punched them. Okay, all right. Kevin said, we can't win if we fight with God's, or we can't lose if we fight with, can't win if we fight with God's plan. We can't lose if we go with God's plan, right? Would be the opposite of that. Brian, still love you, bro. Thank you, Brian. I still love you too. Meatloaf said, my cat growled at Amber, so I held her to my face and said, I'm going to eat your face, and she ran. You are way off topic tonight, Krista, but, I'm glad you're here. True Story says, I agree with you, Andrew. However, I can't take a moral wrong and make it politically right. Yes. Agree with you there as well. Trying to frame my response to that. But I agree. We should never encourage anybody to do it. I guess there's no but to that. We should never encourage anybody to do it. I just am wondering, how do we get people into recovery? Because what we're doing isn't working. I think when we just heap shame onto people more and more and more, it actually disconnects them further from society, which makes the pain get worse, which causes them to seek a stronger reaction, which leads to more overdose deaths and more people ultimately in hell. And yeah, I'm just not okay with that. And like I said, I don't have the solutions. I just know that what we're doing ain't working. Tim says, doesn't seem to work with the government sledgehammer. We need to entice them into a different lifestyle with purpose and meaning. 100%. 100%. Andrew says, a whole lot of issues seem to be tied to the fact that human life in general has been progressively devalued over the past several decades. I totally agree with you on that. We look a lot at, people, I don't think people believe how much the abortion issue actually affects other things. Because when you're willing to take that step as a society and say that those lives don't matter, like, say, like New York, which now allows abortion up to 40 weeks, when you're willing to take that step, that's a huge mental shift for our society. I just believe at that point you've devalued the most innocent of lives. And it's very difficult to set a different standard once you've set that precedent. And that's just one example. I mean, there's others as well, but we've been talking for an hour now. This is such a good conversation. I would love to continue this next week. Like if you guys bring some facts and figures, if you want to share anything on to me on Facebook, I'd be happy to share that same thing over onto the Facebook page, the Kittanning Greatest City in the World page. And I would just like to see if we can take this conversation another step and see if we can just have this conversation. I think when we begin to bring the problem into the light, then the solutions begin to become clearer. When we begin to actually not be afraid of the topic, then we can actually have frank discussion with each other. And like tonight, I'm presenting a lot of things that maybe you guys haven't considered before, and I hadn't considered before, maybe a year or two ago when I started researching this kind of stuff. And so I don't have all the answers, but I am willing to play, I call it Christ's advocate. I don't ever want to play devil's advocate, but I'm willing to play the opposite side of all these things just so that we can kind of advance the discussion and not get stuck in our same mindset that we've had for so long, because that we're not making enough progress, and I'm not going to be satisfied until we do. So anyways, I just so appreciate you guys' hearts and the fact that you're here. I know that we're all on the same page in one aspect, that we do want to see people find true recovery. We do want to see people changed. We do want to see drugs not be a problem in our community. We do want to see the next generation be able to grow up without having to worry about those kinds of things. I know that we're on the same page in that, and so I thank you all for that. Let's look at these last few comments. I know there's a lot more coming in, so I don't want to leave any out tonight. It's been too good. True Story says, why not just call in and connect with Teen Challenge? Teen Challenge isn't just for teens, it's for everyone. Teen Challenge has a huge success rate. Yeah, Teen Challenge is very similar to what I was talking about as far as Hope Center. So yeah, maybe we could. That'd be great. Tim Wolf says, free drones for everyone who quits drugs. Something fun. Yeah. As long as they're better pilots than me, Tim. Andrew says, well, the moment you say something like, hey, maybe it doesn't help that alcoholism is worshipped and served with 14 bars in the area, people are up in arms. Yeah, very true, Andrew. Very true. Yeah, people don't have any issue with that, do they? But it's definitely not helpful at all. I had another comment for that, but I can't remember what it was. Chloe says, I'm a student at SRU. I'm assuming that's Slippery Rock, from Kittanning. Just want to let you know I'm grateful for your efforts into improving and making Kittanning more beautiful and meaningful than it has in the past. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chloe. That's just a great comment. I so appreciate you being here. Appreciate you connecting to the channel. Let me know if we can ever connect, and if you ever have any ideas for me, I'd love to hear them. I love that you're going away, getting an education, and I hope that you'll come back to Kittanning and join in the fight to make it the greatest city in the world. Andrew, yeah, that's true. Andrew says, fix the addiction issue, but not my addiction. That is so true, isn't it? Everybody wants to fix everybody else, but not themselves. And that's kind of why when I made the first addiction video, I made it everything, because I think we're not willing to admit that we're addicted to caffeine as a society, or that we're addicted to sugar as a society, and that those things can be just as harmful, and those things are just as much a symptom of us trying to mask other problems inside as they are as drugs and alcohol is. And so we have to be willing to have that conversation on a whole different level than we are. True Story says, Teen Challenge, 1 year commitment, new circle of friends, established with successful recoveries, work opportunities for even felons, Holy Spirit filled, and completely biblical without blurring help needs. I love that, True Story. We need something like that in Kittanning, or in Armstrong County. And yeah, maybe it's time to start making those calls and figure out what would it take to get it here. And if we had someone that owned some land that said, hey, here's 20 acres with something beautiful on it, and this is where you could do it and where you could build it. I don't know. We have to start to get a little more creative. We have to start thinking outside the box, and then we have to execute on the ideas. We have to go for it. We have to think big and dream big, and I believe God will take care of the rest. That's it, you guys. Tim says, oh no, now I'm addicted to this YouTube channel. There's worse things. On the YouTube channel front, just so you guys know, I have 4 videos right now that are in the hopper. One of them will be edited by tomorrow. The next one will be edited by Friday, and will be edited and come out on Friday. That'll be the final interview with Mike Rizzo on Kittanning 300. It's a really good one. You don't want to miss that podcast. And then I'll have all those other 3 videos done by Friday as well. So you're going to have a lot of content coming your way this week. It's just been really wild over the past couple weeks, but I've finished up so many projects now, and my time is starting to free up a little bit. So I very much appreciate your patience, and appreciate the conversation tonight. It was so good, and I can't wait to see what happens. Continue to pray, continue to mull around ideas, continue to seek God for what he would have you do, and let's just change the world together, you guys. Anyways, love you all. Can't wait to see you next Sunday night, 9 o'clock. Bye-bye.